They thought she was just a name on a list, a placeholder, a desk officer sent to check a box. But Evelyn Cross didn't flinch. She walked across the blistering tarmac of Fort Arledge like someone who had walked that path before long before jet engines had GPS or pilots had drones to do their work. The July sun bore down mercilessly, warping the horizon into waves of heat, but she moved without rushing, without sweating, as if she'd trained under worse. Most people didn't even look up. At first, to them, she was just a woman past her prime, flight suit too loose, grey-streaked hair tied neatly back. She looked more like someone's retired high school teacher than someone suited for the elite recertification training of combat pilots. And that's exactly what they saw a relic. Inside Hangar 14, the tone was very different. Loud voices, slaps on the back, arrogance thick as jet fuel in the air. A dozen pilots, all in their 20s and 30s, lounged in chairs like they owned the place. Their boots were propped up on crates, sunglasses perched on their heads, their uniforms crisp. Their laughter was full of G-force stories and over-the-top bravado. They didn't even notice her walk in. But Master Sergeant Drake did. Big man, chest like a barrel, eyes like a hawk, who'd seen one too many rookie mistakes. He called the room to order with a bark. "All right, gentlemen, let's make this quick." He paused when he saw her. Well, look what the personnel gods dragged in. A few snickers. One of the younger pilots, Lieutenant Harrow, leaned over to whisper, "She's probably here to do inventory." That got a laugh. Drake smirked, eyes still fixed on Evelyn. "Welcome to the Simulator Recert program. This is where we see which of you desk jockeys can still tell the throttle from the ejection handle." He motioned toward a row of high-tech simulator-starring metal beasts bristling with cables and monitors. F-35 systems, full threat environments. Don't crash the government's imaginary $200 million plane. Then he paused at the list on his clipboard. "Cross, Evelyn Cross, you're last on the list." She nodded once, calmly. "You can watch and learn," he added, the tone in his voice making it clear that he didn't expect her to do anything more. There it was, the mockery, the dismissal, the quiet exile. She didn't argue. She just took a seat on the side bench straight posture, hands resting on her knees and watched. Lieutenant Harrow was up first, cocky, confident, chin lifted like it had never known humility. "Watch and learn, gents," he called out as he climbed into Simulator 1. The screen lit up with a complex air-to-air scenario, hostile fighters, anti-aircraft sites, jamming interference. It was chaos. He lasted 92 seconds. "Eject, eject, eject," the simulator barked. "Damn thing bugged out," he said as he climbed out, red-faced. But it wasn't a bug. It was just a test he couldn't beat. One by one, the others stepped in. One by one, they failed. Some didn't last even a minute. The air in the hangar started to changeless laughter now, more silence. No one looked quite as relaxed. Colonel Mitchell, the base commander, arrived, glancing at the screen with disapproval. "This scenario's not supposed to be impossible, is it, Sergeant?" he asked, tight-lipped. "It's high threat, sir," Drake replied, "but doable." Mitchell looked at the roster, then at Evelyn. "Who's Cross?" "Transfer from Logistics Command," Drake said dismissively. "Been at a desk for years." Mitchell gave a sigh that said everything. "Fine, get it over with." That was her cue. Evelyn Cross stood, still silent, still slow. She walked toward Simulator 7. No swagger, no fanfare, just quiet precision. And then, she did something odd. She ran her hand gently along the simulator's metal side like it was alive, like she was saying hello. Private Lucas, a technician monitoring the diagnostics, furrowed his brow. No one ever did that. No one ever treated the machines like they mattered. Drake scoffed. "Cross, objective simple. Don't crash, don't die. That's all we're asking." She looked at him with eyes that didn't flinch, didn't blink. "I understand," she said softly. Her voice was steady, calm, not fragile, just contained. Then she stepped inside. The canopy hissed shut. The world outside faded, and something shifted. They still didn't know who she was. But they were about to find out. The moment Evelyn Cross settled into the cockpit, everything changed, though no one could quite say why. The simulator's canopy hissed closed, encasing her in a pod of blinking lights, humming circuits, and simulated pressure systems. At first, she didn't move. Her gloved hands rested on the throttle and stick like they belonged there. Not like she had to remember how they worked, but like she'd never forgotten. On the outside, the room was oddly silent. Colonel Mitchell stood with arms folded, watching closely. The younger pilots leaned in, expecting the usual panic, fumbling, a crash within a minute, maybe even sooner. "She's probably trying to remember where the on switch is," Harrow whispered. Private Lucas didn't laugh. He was staring at the monitor, where Cross's vitals were stable. No spike in heart rate, no tension in grip pressure, not even a flicker of hesitation. Inside the simulator, she opened her eyes. The screen flickered to life. A mountain range at dusk appeared, a simulated war zone riddled with SAM sites and hostile aircraft. The system labeled it Red Fang Scenario, Maximum Threat. 4 enemy fighters, hidden missile sites, jamming interference, minimal visibility. The kind of simulation that broke the best. On screen, enemy blips bloomed across her radar like red flowers in a minefield. And then Evelyn did something that none of them expected. She dropped, nose down, throttle wide, straight toward the canyon floor. "What the hell is she doing?" one pilot blurted out. "She's gonna crash," Harrow barked. "No," Private Lucas whispered, leaning closer. "She's terrain masking, using the ground to hide from radar." The others turned to him. "What?" "She's flying nap of the earth. Old school. No one teaches that anymore." Down in the canyon, her F-35 skimmed mere feet from jagged cliff walls. Not a wobble, not a correction. She banked through narrow bends with a grace that felt impossible. "Look at her altitude hold," someone muttered. "She's flying that manually." Master Sergeant Drake's eyes narrowed. No one flies this scenario like that, not even instructors. But she was. She moved like water through rock, flowing through danger instead of resisting it. On the screen, the enemy fighters flew overhead, unable to get a lock. Their radar sweeps passed above her, blind to her ghost-like presence. "She's not fighting the terrain," Lucas said softly. "She's dancing with it." Then came the moment no one saw coming. She pulled up silent, Swift emerging directly behind one of the enemy fighters, and selected her cannon. "Wait, what?" Drake leaned in. "That's suicide. No one does a gun run anymore. That's 20th century stuff." But Evelyn was already firing. One short, precise burst. Enemy 1, destroyed. Then another. Clean. Deliberate. Enemy 2 destroyed. Not a wasted shot, not a missile used. The simulator speakers echoed her voice, low and clear. Tango 1 down. Tango 2 down. It wasn't bravado, it was a field report. Now aware of the attack, the remaining 2 bogies broke formation, trying to pin her down, but she didn't stay to fight. She vanished back into the canyons, lower, faster, silent. "She's gone," Harrow whispered, blinking at the screen. Drake stepped forward, jaw clenched. "This isn't just instinct. She's dismantling the scenario." He knew. He'd helped program the simulation himself. Every trap, every line of code. And she was unraveling it. With terrifying precision. No wasted flares. No excess speed. Her energy management was textbook perfection. She weaved through radar pockets and dead zones, like she had mapped them out by hand. It was like watching a chess master play blindfolded and still win. By now, the entire hangar was quiet. No one sat, no one joked. Even Colonel Mitchell had taken a step closer to the screen, eyebrows furrowed, watching like a man trying to solve a riddle that kept solving itself before he could finish the question. And then, she reached the missile sites. 3 SAM platforms, layered beneath electronic jamming and simulated terrain distortion. Every other pilot had fallen here. But not Evelyn. She approached at an angle they hadn't considered, low enough to avoid early detection, then pulled up sharply and dropped 2 precision-guided bombs. Direct hits. Missiles launched in retaliation fast, deadly, locked on. She didn't flinch. Instead, she spun the aircraft into a high-G roll, deploying countermeasures not in panic but, like a dancer moving in sync with an invisible rhythm. Flares, chaff, timed at the millisecond. Missiles missed. The crowd exhaled, many of them realizing they'd been holding their breath. "She just cleared the whole scenario," Lucas said in disbelief, "and she hasn't even scratched the paint." The simulator displayed, "Threats neutralized. Aircraft intact. Mission time, 3:51. But Drake looked uneasy. "There's one more trigger," he muttered. "The no-win scenario." A hidden wave of 6 more enemy fighters appeared stacked for ambush. The final, unwinnable test. Even the colonel shook his head. No one beats this. And then, Evelyn did something none of them had ever seen before. She cut the engine. For a second, there was only silence. The aircraft became a glider, falling through the sky. The pursuing fighters screamed past her position, unable to match her sudden deceleration. She relit the engine in mid-fall, back in the center of the formation. Point blank. She fired everything. Fox 3, ripple fire. On-screened X's bloomed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Gone. And the simulation ended. Perfect score. No damage. No errors. No one moved. No one spoke. She had just done the impossible. The screen flashed white as the simulation ended. Then, mission complete. Survival probability, 100%. Aircraft intact. Score, 100%. A score that wasn't just unheard of, it wasn't supposed to exist. Even the simulation designers, including Master Sergeant Drake himself, had built this test knowing it was unsolvable. A benchmark, a wall meant to stand. And she had walked straight through it like it was fog. The simulator canopy opened with a slow hiss. Evelyn Cross stepped down, no swagger, no smirk, just calm composure. Her hair was slightly tousled from the helmet, but her expression hadn't changed. If anything, she looked like she had just finished reading a good book. Behind her, no one said a word, not even the colonel. Harrow, who had mocked her just 15 minutes earlier, looked down at his boots, cheeks burning. Drake looked like he had seen a ghost. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again. No words came out. Colonel Mitchell blinked, his brows drawn into a deep line. And that's when it happened. A door at the far end of the hangar slammed open. A young officer, Captain Ellis, burst in, breathless, his face pale and panicked. "Colonel Mitchell, sir." The colonel turned sharply. "What is it, Captain? We're in the middle of a debrief." But the captain didn't answer him. His eyes locked on Evelyn Cross. "No, excuse me, sir, but," he pointed at her, "the call. It's for her." The hangar went still again. "A call? For her?" "Who's calling?" Mitchell asked, clearly irritated. The young captain swallowed hard. His voice dropped. "Secure line 1, situation room." Everyone froze. Even the youngest lieutenants knew what that meant. Mitchell blinked, unsure if he'd heard correctly. The situation room? As in, the White House? "Yes, sir," the captain whispered. "They asked for her by name." Time stopped. Evelyn nodded once, as if she'd been expecting it. She walked past the stunned crowd, past the techs, the pilots, the instructor stowed, the secure comms console in the corner of the hangar. Colonel Mitchell followed, more out of instinct than order, his mind racing. She picked up the red handset, turned slightly away from the crowd. Her voice was soft, but audible. "Cross here." Then a pause. "And?" "Yes, Mr. President." The words dropped like a stone into still water. The entire hangar reeled with it. Reyes muttered under his breath, "Oh my God." Drake looked like he might actually faint. Colonel Mitchell staggered back half a step. The President of the United States wasn't just calling the base. He wasn't calling the colonel. He was calling her. Evelyn Cross. Or whoever she really was. No one dared move. She continued speaking into the phone with unshaken calm. "I understand the situation." A long pause. "They're trying to activate the Ghost Protocol." Drake paled further. Ghost Protocol was a military myth, a Cold War legend, a last resort contingency known only by a few top clearance figures in the intelligence community. "Yes, sir, I'm familiar with it. I designed it." Mitchell's knees nearly buckled. What did she just say? Evelyn's voice remained level, unfazed by the storm she had just unleashed. "Override code is Valkyrie's Dawn. No, sir, they won't find the payload. It's still shielded behind the plasma field quantum key." She paused again, listening. Something flickered in her expression. Not fear, not sadness, just memory, a weight she had carried too long. "Tell General Marcus, Spectre is active?" "That name." Mitchell staggered again. Spectre. Not a protocol, not a code, a person. A whispered name in the dark halls of special operations. a ghost in black files and redacted reports. A name tied to missions that didn't exist, run by operatives that died before they were born. He looked at her and suddenly it all made sense. The precision, the silence, the control, the uncanny awareness. She wasn't some logistics officer sent to fill a seat. She was the program. She was the ghost. Evelyn hung up the line and turned slowly. The quiet, middle-aged woman was gone. What stood in her place was something else, something that made even the highest rank in the room instinctively stand at attention. Her voice cut through the silence like a knife. "Colonel, I need priority transport to Andrews Air Force Base. Wheels up in 10 minutes. Mitchell, a man who had commanded entire squadrons and briefed 4-star generals, found himself saluting her before he could even think. Yes, ma'am," he stammered. "Right away." He turned, barking orders at the young officers. The hangar burst into frantic motion. But Evelyn didn't look at them. She simply walked calmly toward the hangar doors. The sun poured in from outside, blinding and golden. As she stepped through, the sleeve of her flight suit shifted. Just slightly. Private Lucas caught a glimpse of something inked on her forearm. A black osprey in flight. Beneath it, a single black teardrop. The mark of Spectre. And suddenly, everything about her made perfect, terrifying sense. Outside, the storm rotor of a black helicopter was already shaking the ground. It wasn't a training chopper. It wasn't base issue. It was sleek, silent, matte black, the kind used by special operations, the kind civilians never saw, and most soldiers never rode in. The wind kicked up dust as it descended, blades slicing the afternoon glare, but Evelyn Cross didn't flinch. She walked toward it like she belonged to the air itself. In the hangar, no one moved. No one dared to. Colonel Mitchell stood frozen by the secure phone, still gripping the desk. The reality hadn't caught up with him yet. He had barked at her, mocked her. Now he had saluted her and meant it. Master Sergeant Drake sat on the simulator stairs, his elbows on his knees, face pale. His bravado had drained out like blood from a wound. The drills he had built, the training he had led, what were they compared to her? She had written protocols, the rest of them merely followed. Lieutenant Harrow tried to process what he'd witnessed, tried to understand how the same woman he'd laughed at had danced through death simulations like a predator. "I called her useless," he whispered to no one. No one replied. Because what could you say after that? Private Lucas still stared at the monitor, the mission summary still glowing on screen like a monument. Mission score, 100%. Operator, E. Cross. Alias, Spectre. Outside, Evelyn reached the helicopter. She didn't look back. She didn't wave. She didn't pause. She stepped into the bird like it was the continuation of her breath. The hatch sealed behind her, and the blades screamed louder. As the helicopter lifted off, the dust blew back toward the hangar, clouding the faces of the men and women still reeling in its wake. She was gone. And everything had changed. Not with a gun. Not with a shout. Not with revenge. But with a display of truth so undeniable that it rewrote the air in the room. Hours later, after the hangar was cleaned and the console shut down, Colonel Mitchell sat alone at his desk, the lights dim. A folder sat unopened in front of him. Cross's reassignment file, the one that said she came from logistics, the one that listed her as non-combat. He didn't open it. What would be the point? You don't measure ghosts with paperwork. He glanced up at the wall at the framed photos of squadrons past. For a brief second, he wondered how many of them owed something to her. How many lives she had saved before any of them even knew her name. Back in the barracks, Lieutenant Harrow sat on his bunk, staring at the floor. The arrogance was gone, the swagger drained, and in its place, something new had taken root. Humility. He looked up at his locker mirror and whispered, "My God, we were fools." And Private Lucas? He requested a transfer. Not out of fear, but out of purpose. He wanted to work in intelligence now. He wanted to be where real heroes worked, not the loud ones, the silent ones. The ones who moved through the world with quiet steps and changed everything without needing applause. And Evelyn? No one saw her again. At least, not as Evelyn. But whispers began to spread in places no map covered, places where satellites didn't orbit, places where the most dangerous conversations began with, activate Ghost Protocol. Some say she was sent to intercept a rogue satellite, others that she prevented a launch no one was supposed to know about. But those are just whispers, because legends like her don't post online. They don't make speeches. They don't need medals. They just finish the job. Sometimes, greatness doesn't wear medals or rank. Sometimes, it walks softly, listens closely, and speaks only when the world is finally quiet enough to hear. So the next time you think someone is just a woman, just old, just quiet, ask yourself this: what if she's the one writing the rules you're trying to play by? She didn't need to shout, she let the truth fly at Mach 1,